Well, there's less than a month to go for the GST to be introduced, and the big question is India Inc. ready? Good evening, and thanks very much for joining us on this special broadcast here on CNBC-TV18. Over the next 30 minutes, we bring you details of the exclusive CEO poll conducted among the who's who of India Inc. in association with BMR Advisors. Now, the poll was conducted among CEOs, MDs, presidents, chairmen, and CFOs spanning 17 different sectors. Every participant was sent an online link to the poll, and the nature of the poll was, of course, anonymous. Now, here are the key highlights. Let's start. Only 19% of India Inc. is more than 80% prepared for the GST rollout on the 1st of July. A majority, that's 45.3%, are between 50 and 80% ready for a July 1st rollout. Let's take a look at more of our findings. More than 52% of companies believe that a July 1st rollout is not a realistic timeline given the government's own preparedness. Remember, the government says it's absolutely prepared. Just over 17% believe that the government is in fact prepared for a July 1 rollout, and about 20% say that they're unclear. Now, a majority of over 42% of the companies polled want the GST to be deferred by 2 months, but over 31% say that they do not want any deferral. 1 month deferral of about 7.8%, but the majority, 42%, looking for a 2-month deferral. But the government's response is no can do. 1st of July it is going to be. Joining us now to discuss this further, Mukesh Butani, Managing Partner at BMR Legal, Rajeev Dimri, Leader of Indirect Tax at BMR Associates LLP, Pawan Goenka, MD at M&M, Rakesh Biyani, Director at Future Group. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here.
Ministers from almost every state who spoke to me were absolutely clear about maintaining the 1st July date. And we are in a state of preparedness for the 1st of July.
Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Mukesh, let me start by asking you. The poll clearly shows that majority, that's over 45%, say they're between 50 and 80% ready for the rollout of the GST on the 1st of July. We have another meeting coming up on the 3rd of June where pending issues will be decided. We still have a lot of rules that have not been clarified by the government just yet. This is proving to be a race against time, isn't it?
It is indeed, and I don't think any of the survey findings are surprising. So I think there's a lot of hope that's pinned on the June 3rd GST Council meeting. I don't know if this survey would have looked any different, but please bear in mind that when this survey was undertaken, we did factor in the last GST meeting, which lasted for 2 days. So despite that, the industry...
And that's the meeting where some rates finally were decided.
That's right. So there was a significant amount of decisions that got taken in the last 2 days GST meetings, and this poll is conducted. We were in the middle of the poll, but we did have some time, and the poll was open for our participants to go and change their view. So it's very much evident as to what the general sentiment of the industry is on the level of preparedness. I just wanted to make one point, and this is debatable, whether a lot of things lie with the industry in terms of things that they have to do to get the corporate sector to a state of readiness. And that's the reason one of the questions we asked in the poll, what does each corporate feel or what does each CEO feel about the degree of preparedness? Are they 70% prepared, 80% prepared? Because depending on which industry you're coming from, the nuances for each industries are very different.
Very different. Rajeev Dimri, this is a situation where the government and the Revenue Secretary, whether it's here in our studios, in our GST town hall, or recently in Bangalore, saying very clearly that, look, the government is 100% ready. It's India Inc. that needs to get its act together. The Finance Minister also clarifying that he will not blink. 1st of July it is going to be. So where do you believe India Inc. is likely to see the most pain? Where are the critical pain points?
Well, this is a law and the fine print must be there. Even though we have indications of rate as per the GST Council recommendation, we still have to read the fine print when the notifications come. So not all states' laws have come out. That's the first sign of tentativeness. Today we had Delhi announcing that they will go with a rate which is slightly different from the assumption that was made. So if we go back to the assumption that we will have somewhat differing rates on a state-by-state basis, that's a material input for nationwide companies to decide pricing. So I think when companies say they're 80% ready, I think it is not for the want of effort by the companies, but they need that final laws and rules.
So they're still awaiting significant clarification from the government. Just on that issue of pricing, and that's an interesting point that you brought up, Rajeev, because we polled that, and 45% of India Inc. expects pricing to be marginally impacted due to the rollout of the GST. Can you explain to us what we should expect? Because the assumption is that, look, if you're in the 28% bracket, then this is, the likely price. Whether luxury items will in fact be cheaper post the rollout of the goods and services tax or not. We're seeing advertisements being put out by car makers, etc., saying, look, we're giving you discounts, come and buy at this point in time. One is an issue of lack of clarity on what happens to stock, so which is perhaps why manufacturers are trying to push things out and clear out as much inventory as possible. But how do you really assess pricing post GST?
At a macro level, enough information is available. So if we take the example of luxury cars, that debate that information has been out there for more than 3-4 months, that it will be upwards of 40%. The existing rates, depending on how the calculations work and what the facts are, could be at 47%. So there is a clear advantage for certain segments. And therefore, it's not surprising that companies, for combination of reasons, are treating it like there are new tax rates coming, just as it happens for budget time. Exactly. Yeah. So it's similar to that. So that in itself is an interesting development, but that's an isolated event. Because one company did it, so the competing products are coming in, which is a good development. The rates are there, but I have enough information to be ready with my analysis, but do I have enough information to make my final decision? Is the gap, and given the time, I have to make my decision for the company, dealers, distributors, and that's the race against time.
That's the race against time. Pawan Goenka, just to pick up on the points that we just heard here from both Rajeev Dimri as well as Mukesh Butani, where are you feeling the gap, sir? Where are you feeling the pressure and the pain as you prepare yourself for the GST rollout on the 1st of July, and you've got exactly 1 month?
Okay, so let me first say that irrespective of whether we are ready or not ready, July 1st must happen. That is my firm belief. And the reason I said that is we in India are known to get things done last minute. 30 days is a lot of time, and if 3rd June is conclusive, if you know everything that is there to be known about what will happen in GST regime, then we still have 27 days from then to make things, to get things done, and we will get it done. No matter how long we wait, when we start, there will be a little bit of chaos, a little bit of confusion. Doesn't matter. We have to deal with it. We have to take it in stride. For such a huge change to just say everything will be absolutely fine on day 1 is expecting too much. So I'm in the camp of people who are saying July 1st must be adhered to no matter what. Okay. Provided June 3 concludes everything. That is very important. We cannot say June 3rd now is going to become June 15th or June 18th.
There may be another meeting, sir. The Revenue Secretary as well as CBC Chief told me that if need be, there may be another meeting, because on the 3rd of June, it's a very, very packed agenda for the GST Council.
But the next meeting must happen on 5th or 6th or 7th and not go to 25th. So that by 5th, 7th, we are absolutely sure of what we have to do, because we cannot, there are many decisions to be made. There is decision about inventory, there is decision of what we keep in the plant, what we put out in the field, and these things cannot happen overnight. So one is the preparedness in terms of the IT infrastructure, the paperwork, stuff like that. Second is how do you business prepares for the rollout? How do we ensure that we have everything done as per the new GST law? And third is we have to manage the inventory. We cannot afford to have a 4%, 6%, 8% hit on the inventory because we will not get the full transition credit. So that becomes very important right now, and for the industry like auto and tractor, where the inventory size is very large and the amounts involved are very large, it's very important for us the transition credit is very carefully and fairly defined. And that's the only thing that I'm looking forward to from June 3rd.
What could be the quantum of the hit in terms of the auto sector specifically if these transitional issues are not clarified adequately or satisfactorily?
Well, see, if I look at, let's say, tractor industry first. Right now, there is no provision for any transition credit for tractor industry. In that case, tractor industry could have a hit of 300-400 crore, depending on how the final inventory is. Auto industry typically would have a 5 to 6 week inventory, which is about 300,000 vehicles in the field. Now, 300,000 vehicles in the field, if we do not get full credit, even if it is loss of 4% or 5%, that's a very big amount. I don't have the number in front of me to tell you a number. It's a very big amount. And keep in mind that we already had a hit most of the companies because of BS3 to BS4 transition. We cannot have a situation again that, okay, it's all right to take 200, 300, 400 crore. That's a lot of money for a company. Therefore, it's very important that the transition credit does not leave us in a lurch where again we lose something. And after that GST comes. So that's my only sort of anxiety right now.
That's your only anxiety. Rakesh Biyani, is that your key anxiety as well, transition credit related issues, or do you have other anxieties that you would like to share with us here on the program?
Well, when you really look at it, some of the products that we deal with and which are a large share of our business, they have not yet been decided upon also on the rates, which is textile and footwear. And those rates are only going to be decided on the 3rd. Textiles and specifically apparels is a very long lead time product. The products that are going to be going into the stores in the festive season, these were sort of decided upon and bought in the month of March, April kind of period. And pricing has been done. There are different laws which kind of define packaged commodities, and apparel falls in that. MRPs are sort of pre-decided upon it. And this has been done all on the assumption saying the fact that the government is going to continue with a revenue neutral rate. And R&R and we've met several top people in the government. Each one of them has assured us the fact that the revenue neutral rate is going to come in. And we have, as an industry, shared what the R&R on apparel is. It's about 6% is the R&R today. And based on that, we have gone ahead and we have completed our orders. Manufacturing is in full flow right now. And if there is a surprise package on the rate that is going to get applied, yes, there could be a turmoil.
You're giving the GST Council no choice at all. You're saying, look,
it's not about my choice. I think, no, but I didn't make the R&R, right? The R&R is what the government collects today, right? And I have, we've been justifying that number through a series of documentation that the government has asked for. There was a special working group that was created to look into the R&R details related to textile and apparel and footwear. And each one of them has gone ahead and submitted all the information. Now, I think it's been, while yes, 3rd is going to be, there is going to be an announcement. It is a very, very important sector. It is a huge job creation sector in terms of apparels. And, we've been so focused in terms of creating jobs for the export market all time, and we've never been able to deliver on the export numbers. Domestic industry has been growing quite well. There's a huge opportunity in terms of the growth in the domestic market. And I think, there's a tremendous opportunity for the government to really, get more investment in the textile sector and really focus on the domestic market.
And I would imagine that these are going to be, these will be the factors that will weigh on the Council's mind when it meets on the 3rd. But Rajeev and Mukesh Butani, just to pick up on the point that, we heard there from Rakesh Biyani, and lots of industry lobbies are representing to various governments, the central government, the state government, whether it's marble, automobiles, textile, footwear, the leather industry in specific. The survey shows that 42% of India Inc. actually believes that the GST Council has been responsive. But do you believe that on the 3rd of June, this is going to become an even more complex and complicated matter because branded, unbranded, packaged, what falls under which category, we are going to see differential rates even on the goods side?
Yes. And that's the point I made, that while what we have from the Council, to the extent the rates have been announced, are the ones that are on an all-India basis. But there's an important assumption whether states will all follow a single rate or will they have their own rates. And in certain prices, this is a certain product, even a marginal increase or decrease in prices across state boundaries starts to create diversions. And companies are sensitive on that. So it is an important aspect, but in this entire GST conversation, one sector, which is an important impacted sector, is the services sector, which only has, so part of the survey, because our survey included both goods and services and all types, some of the downsides of financial impact is also on account of service sector respondents, because they clearly see a rate going from 15 to 18. Not in all cases they are in a position to pass on that. Some are, but some are not. Hotels has an issue about those, restaurants have an issue about it.
And again, there's differentiated taxes there. Yes, Mukesh, the point that you wanted to make.
I just wanted to make 2 points. We asked the participants 2 questions. One was the how they were able to advocate their concerns before the government, and that's why you pointed out that 53% said no and 46. But we asked another specific question, moving away from the government, after the GST Council has been set up, how they have been able to interact with the GST Council. There, the response has not been very encouraging. 40% people say they can't say anything. 9% said they are not receptive. 31% said they are receptive, but no change has been made in the rules as yet. And only 18% said yes, the final rules and law address most of our concerns. So I think you need to now get into a little deeper into the survey to get to this question as well.
Yeah, sure. One of the other questions that we asked, and that is one of the key findings, Mr. Goenka, let me put that to you. 56% of India Inc. says that undertaking compliance will be one of the biggest challenges. And, you were talking about some of the anxieties that you have related to transitional credit, but compliance, what is the pain point that you're facing there within the organization on account of GST?
Okay. So let me just make two quick points before I answer this question. First, on transition credit, the Revenue Secretary in another TV interaction had said very clearly that on 3rd of June they will debate this point. They are aware of the issues, and he, I think, said that you will probably hear some good news. So I am counting on that.
Yes, he did.
And second, as far as responsiveness of the council is concerned, I think at least in the industries that I am associated with, most of what we had suggested has been accepted by the council. The rate for electric cars, the rate for tractors, having a single cess rate, all of these have been accepted. So I have found that council has been very, very receptive and clearly mandated that we should not have an increase in prices because of GST. It's same or lower. I mean, that's the mandate and that's what they've worked on. Now, coming back to your question, it's very difficult for us to pinpoint today what will be the difficulty that we will face in compliance. If I look at things on paper, everything looks quite good. Okay, there's a very well-defined flow of information that goes from a tier 2 vendor to a tier vendor, gets sort of aggregated, goes to government portal, from there comes down to us, and so on and so forth. Only when we start using it would we know where things are not working well, where we need to get into documentation that is not very very easy to do.
Let me ask you a related question then, sir. Let me just ask you a related question, because that's one of the questions that we polled as well. What is the level of preparedness of your IT systems presently to undertake compliances under the GST? Our poll shows that 50% of India Inc. says that they're between 50 and 80% ready, even on the IT front. So taking the compliance and the IT preparedness question forward, let me ask that question to you, Mr. Goenka.
I think if it was just about Mahindra, we can start tomorrow. But obviously we cannot do that because we have to deal with many stakeholders, suppliers, dealers, consultants, and so on and so forth. If I take all of that into consideration, I think we are reasonably ready with dealers. I don't see a problem on 1st of July at all. We are reasonably ready with the larger suppliers or suppliers that we deal with directly. I don't see much of a problem because we still have 1 month, and 1 month is a long time. Where we will have some difficulty will be the smaller suppliers. Where perhaps they are not as ready as we would like it to be. But as I have said, that little bit of chaos, confusion when we make a change as big as this, I am okay. Let's get started. It will take few days to fix it, and things will change very quickly. I mean, I've seen this so many times happening in India that things will come together very quickly. So I'm not the one who says let's get everything perfect and then start.
All right. Mr. Biyani, let me put two other questions to you that we also polled here as part of our CEO poll. According to you, what is the level of preparedness of your partners, your vendors, and your customers? And also, have you finalized your inventory management strategy on the back of what you've heard so far? So let me put both those questions that we polled as part of our survey to you as well.
So I agree with Mr. Goenka's assessment, that the change is so enormous that you can't have 100% readiness for everything. 30 days is a very long period in today's time, and we will all get prepared. And even if some part of it can get pushed into July, because the first you have to keep in mind the fact that the first returns related to GST have to be only filed in the month of August, right? It's not that, the first day itself you need to start interacting in totality. So I don't see any challenge. I think for the quality of vendors, we are not when we talk about corporate India today, not all of us are today dealing with all kinds of small vendors who don't have technology platforms, etc. The country has moved forward. Every single company is using technologies in some form or the other, and there are going to be service providers which will ensure the fact that the smaller companies will transition. There could be chaos, but I don't see a worry. I think this is a huge change, and it's something which the country has been waiting for a very long time. As far as the second question goes, how well and what have we done for our supply chain? I think, we've been waiting for this event to happen for a very long time. We're one of the first few retailers who sort of built a consolidated GST-ready distribution center in the heart of the country. We've been running that center for the last 3 years or a little more than 3 years now, waiting for the GST to come in to take advantage of moving things across state boundaries without the loss of tax. And what we are now doing, of course, is the fact that as we get ready for the GST, our new integrated food DCs, we've identified the locations where we're going to put them up. We're currently working very closely with all our partners, which is the vendors, FMCG players, etc., to work out a new supply chain strategy, which would allow us to, serve our stores in a more appropriate and a more efficient manner, bring in the savings that GST promises, and just look at, how do we pass it back to the customer and drive growth. Absolutely. I think, as I said, I think it's the best thing that could have happened to this country, and yeah.
But I just wanted to ask both you and Mr. Goenka, because that was one of the other questions that we polled as well. Do you expect your distributors or retailers to destock or stuff ahead of the GST implementation? Let me start by asking you, Mr. Biyani, and then I'll get a quick comment in from Mr. Goenka.
I think, this scare that is getting created around the fact that you will not have to, people won't keep stocks, etc. There are some decisions which are going to happen on the 3rd, which are basically the transitionary rules, right? And they will take care. And at least whatever little that we have studied, yes, in some categories it could be a concern, and they will get addressed. I don't see any reason why we need to really start thinking about we need to destock ourselves and then restock ourselves at a later date. I don't think so this is going to be required as much. If there are challenges on some categories, I think it's, we need to discuss with the right authorities, show a genuine case around it, and I'm sure they'll get resolved.
A quick word from you, Mr. Goenka, on that before I come to Mukesh and Rajeev.
I think our distributors perhaps will not have to worry about destocking, because in most cases, given the ticket size involved, the OEMs would protect the distributors. So if there's any kind of loss that happens in transition, I think the OEMs will cover that. Some have already informed, some will inform, so from distributor point of view, it doesn't matter. But from OEM's viewpoint, they will probably wait till June 3rd to see what the transition credit is. If the transition credit doesn't lead to much of a loss in the transition, I don't think that there will be much of destocking that will happen in auto and tractor trade. But if we find that there is going to be a loss in transition, we will have to destock and minimize that loss. But we are kind of sort of caught in the middle, because we cannot destock to a point where we lose sale. At the same time, we don't want to be left with product which we will not get transition credit for.
And hopefully we'll have clarity on the 3rd of June. But Mukesh, let me ask you one of the questions that we put in the poll. Do you expect your organization to benefit from the GST operationally and financially? What is the sense that you get from what the poll is telling us?
Well, I think it will depend on, which sector you're talking about. So clearly our poll suggested that when it comes to operational efficiencies, the manufacturing organization will tend to benefit more. When it comes to financial efficiencies, manufacturing and retail will benefit more. So there is no discernible trend over here, but I think it will depend from industry to industry.
Okay. Rajeev, you want to add to that?
The flip side is, well, the manufacturing and retail will benefit financially and operationally, because their number of compliance points will come down. It's the service sector which is actually moving from a one nation, one tax to many states, many taxes. So their operational aspect as well as financial are the ones that are stretched. So that 27% which are saying neither we will gain financially or operationally is actually the service sector.
So the service sector is probably the one that we need to watch out for. But one of the other questions, and I think this is an important one that we asked, is what is the expected level of IT automation for tax determination and invoicing requirement? And this is going to be a big factor, at least as far as the SMEs are concerned. Maybe not so much for Mr. Goenka or for Rakesh Biyani. What's your own sense on what the survey is telling you?
And so there is a huge concern. Large companies can handle this. It's the SME, the retailers, this thing. I think there the visibility of all sorts of service providers that is coming in, that is being seen as a possible solution. That there are, return preparers and all sorts of people who are going to help the companies. That is what the companies are worried about, whether they will be able to handle it on time. So, there's some 1-2 month of transition related chaos that will happen, which is inevitable. But at the end of that process, these things will settle down in terms of invoicing. There'll be patches that will come, there'll be software that will come. So all that will become available after the first 2-3 months of some bit of chaos that will happen.
So in terms of disruption, should we brace ourselves for a quarter or a more than a quarter in terms of disruption, Mukesh?
It could be speculative. I think any time that you give could be speculative. But I think...
But in the previous experience, for instance, in the VAT, not the MAT, but the VAT regime, for instance.
I won't compare the level of disruption in a VAT introduction to a GST introduction. So I think they are not an apple-to-apple comparison. I think what's important and what's key for the government is not just how they get past the next 4 weeks in terms of 1, certainly, or 2 GST Council meetings, but what is the mechanism, administrative framework that they are able to create for the purposes of elevating some of the difficulties that can arise. For example, most experts are predicting that classification issues will be one area where there is multiplicity of tax rates. So what kind of mechanism will they create to have an advanced ruling system where rulings are given immediately? Because you're talking about a transaction tax.
So
this can't wait like income tax.
And also have an agile GST council that meets and is much more responsive, taking feedback from what comes in. But Mr. Goenka, let me ask you this, how are you preparing yourself in the sense that do you believe that we could see disruption at least in the first quarter with the rollout of the GST?
Well, disruption of 2 kinds. Okay, one is disruption in terms of paperwork, IT systems, everything working like a clockwork. That will definitely happen, no matter how well prepared you are, no matter how long do you wait. That will happen when you launch. I would again not want to put a number to it, but I would say if somewhere around 3 to 5 months, that's okay. But I don't think it will be to a point where systems break down and business stops. It will be more of sort of doing, trying, correcting, and so on and so forth. The second part is the disruption in the business itself in terms of the movement of goods and in terms of anything that happens on retail sales or so on and so forth. And I think because the GST rates are by and large same as the previous total taxes that we have, customer in the sectors again that I'm familiar with will not see a huge difference, and therefore I don't see that, as we talked about earlier, a lot of destocking or stocking happening. I won't see a change. There are 1 or 2 sub-segments where there's a major change like hybrid, but other than that, everything should work smoothly. So I don't think the business will get disrupted in a major way.
Would you be worried about the fact that there is this anti-profiteering clause that comes with the GST? 48% of companies polled say that leniency on penalties is key for the smooth transition. We've heard the Revenue Secretary here on CNBC-TV18 making that assertion to corporate India that, look, pass on the benefits, we're watching. How concerned is India Inc. about the anti-profiteering clause?
Well, if you really look at all the rates which have been announced, and if you really factor in all the direct taxes or direct indirect taxes and things like service tax which are sort of embedded in the value chain, and if you assume all those taxes, I think more or less today we seem to be at an R&R rate. We've been doing this analysis on the basket sales at our stores.
Okay, so you're saying that largely it's revenue neutral rates. Let me give Mukesh and Rajeev the final say here, because they've in the sense been spearheading this CEO poll. Mukesh, come the 1st of July, how transformative is this going to be for India?
Well, as a policy move, it's clearly transformative, and I think we've gone past that debate. I think the question or apprehension that people have in their mind is the quantum of time it is going to, take to be able to address disruptive issues. And as Mr. Goenka was rightly putting, one will be operational disruptive issues, getting the invoicing IT system in place, and second would be disruptive issues from a medium to long-term standpoint. And that's also the reason why we posed a question to our participants. What are the three things that the government can do to minimize the disruption? One was on the advanced ruling mechanisms, the speed with which it is work. I was talking to Rajeev earlier, and Rajeev mentioned that it will require a mammoth administrative infrastructure to be put in place, because you will have a sudden rush of advanced ruling. The second question we asked was, what about grievance cells and expert committees to redress various issues on operational and legal front? We did not get an encouraging response. 75% people that we polled in were not hopeful. And the last was whether the authorities will take a lenient approach on penal provisions, because whenever there is a new law, there are always technical breaches to the law. Now, are the authorities going to look at it in a more sympathetic manner and give the benefit of doubt to taxpayers?
Light touch or not is the big question.
That's right. I was just telling Rajeev that if I look at my past experience on the transfer pricing law, certainly the benefit was not given to the taxpayers.
There was no light touch then.
Well, I hope this government sticks to its larger commitment of non-adversarial revenue and gives the benefit of doubt.
So what, Rajeev, since you've been part and parcel of putting this poll together, let me end then by asking you, to your mind, what is the biggest highlight? What does this survey tell you about the rollout of the GST on the 1st of July?
Well, the most encouraging part is that nobody's cribbed about that they don't look forward to GST. So some of the issues are about
and even
time.
The, deferral, etc. is like 2 months of a deferral, but at this point in time, the government's sticking with the 1st of July.
Absolutely. So the corporate India, one of the biggest tasks of any government in introducing a tax like this is to buy the concurrence of the stakeholders. We have that in India, and that's a huge advantage. If we can make the experience better, I think that would go a long way. But in terms of transformation changes, I think the real dividends of GST to the economy will start flowing 6, 12, 18 months later. One is the migration of the parallel economy, but more efficient supply chain, more efficient distribution channel. I think that's what the real game changer is. And of course a more predictable tax and a more transparent tax.
Well, I think there's absolutely no doubt, and the survey bears that out as well, that in the long term the GST is going to be a game changer as far as the Indian economy is concerned. The questions lie about the immediate or the short term to the medium term. Pawan Goenka, Rakesh Biyani, many thanks for joining us here on the CNBC-TV18 GST CEO poll, and thank you very much to Mukesh Butani and Rajeev Dimri and to BMR Advisors for putting together this GST CEO poll. I suspect we're going to be doing this exercise a lot more often. This is only the start. We're counting down now to the 1st of July, exactly 1 month to go. We'll be back with you here on your GST destination to update you on all the latest developments. But for now, from all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.